Hello again, everyone. My newest review is going to be for Power of the Prime's Wave 2 Voyagers, including Elita 1 and Hun-Gurrr. These are starting to show up at Walmarts across the US, so, if you're interested in them, let the hunt begin. We're going to start by taking a look at Elita's box. Here you can see, her artwork, very zoomed in, very prominent on the front. Her name is spelled out Elita 1, the numeral. And that's worth pointing out just because there have been several different ways that they've opted to spell her name over the years. Sometimes just with the word one. Sometimes it's like Alita with an A. I think that's a Japanese thing. On the side of the box you can see an image of her combiner form. Back has your usual trappings, along with her write-up, which is nothing special at this point. It's like, how will X wield the power of the primes? That's what pretty much all of them say these days. Except for like the leader class ones and the legends. Standard 12 primes on the side. And nothing really special beyond that. Got her character card here. This is an Amalgamous Prime 1. So it makes her Amalgamous Elita 1. Has the power to spark, shift, and mask her true identity. So I guess it gives her like almost like a shape-shifting ability. It's pretty neat. Now for the figure itself, Elita's vehicle mode is some sort of fictional aircraft. The Elita figure is a pretty heavy retool of the Power of the Prime Starscream mold. So we'll get a chance to compare those two. And she does have a very heavy use of foil stickers on her wings, though in my opinion they come off looking a lot better. They kind of blend with her normal red color here. Completely different details. Very techish details. She kind of reminds me of some sort of a Technobot, like a female scattershot or something. She's got E1 on her tail fins here, which is cool. Elita 1 just got them here. She's got Elita 1 written on her nose cone here and on the other side. She has the optional, Prime Master Gauntlet things hanging off her wingtips. You don't have to keep them on if you don't like them. And then she's got these little guns here, which are, her handguns in a robot mode. So, pretty standard jet transformer. Though, she is at the same time something very different because she does turn into a rather more sci-fi looking jet. And she utilizes a lot of colors that you just really don't see in most Transformers toys. Here's Starscream in his jet mode for comparison. And the biggest differences you can spot pretty quickly are, very different guns attached here. Hers are a lot smaller. And different molding in the wingtips here, as well as the tail fins and even the lateral fins here. The nose cones are actually completely the same. Some big differences I noticed are rather large variations in the tolerances of these toys, even on parts that are exactly the same between them. So one issue that a lot of people have with Starscream is that it's nigh impossible to get these back halves of the jet to stay together because of these pegs that push against each other. There's just no room for them to go anywhere. So he always has a split. Just seems like a big oversight on the design team's part. Elita doesn't have that issue because of the different shape of the rear of her jet. Everything, squeezes together like it should. In fact, there's just kind of a natural gap there. So, works a lot better. On the downside for Elita, on my copy at least, it is extremely difficult to get her nose cone section pushed in all the way. The parts, all the different slots and tabs that need to line up just really don't. And it takes a lot of fiddling and pushing things in a certain order at certain angles to get it to go in. At first, my first attempt at transforming into this mode, I became honestly convinced that it was just impossible to do. That she was always just going to have her nose cones sticking up a bit. I did eventually manage it, but after this review, Not sure how many times I'm going to want to go through the trouble putting her back in jet mode. So I don't know how widespread of an issue that is, but it is something that makes putting her in this transformation just no fun whatsoever. This is the Enigma of combination that comes with the Elita one. The packaging dubs it the Autobot Enigma. This thing is actually a completely new mold from Starscream's Enigma. You can see the major differences here. And if memory serves me, I believe this was called the Decepticon Enigma. So, they're kind of a opposite pair here. Solid block, just like all the other ones. We're now looking at Elita's robot mode. And one of the first things that stands out is the emergence of a lot of coral color once you get a look at this mode. You can see it on her head, her chest, sticking off these, little pegs a bit, very upper arms. And it's just something that's very different and honestly very welcome. It's not a color that we see in Transformers, often, if at all, these days. She has a really nice head sculpt that is, designed very much with her cartoon appearance in mind. Kind of a very ornate helmet here, multiple points and circles on it. Get a look there. Pretty neutral face. Wish I would have given her a little more expression, but it's okay. She gets to hold her little blasters. She does utilize the same Prime Master gauntlets as Starscream. Big difference here is where Starscream's gauntlets are black plastic. Hers are just painted black. They're actually the same coral color plastic as these nubs here. It does come off looking very nice because, it's nice and shiny, but it does create issues now with, anytime you have to plug things into these ports. Whether it's combiner hand pieces or, plugging the Enigma in there, you're now running the risk of scratching some paint off. And in fact, I believe on one of these there is a spot where it got scratched. It's really small though, I'm not sure if I could find it again. But it is there somewhere. Almost every part of Elita's robot mode is new tooling. And I mean, almost every one. Her gauntlets, hands are, now a new, daintier, somewhat open fist variety. Her shoulders, chest, head, legs, feet, shins, everything is pretty much completely different. I think the only parts that actually remain the same are the little armature things that their legs, retract and expand from, and then these very upper arm pieces right here. As far as I can tell, that's it for this mode. One thing that carries over from her jet mode is the very noticeable difference in tolerances in my copy of Elita 1 versus my copy of Starscream. Her little inner leg brackets here don't like to stay plugged in. There's a little hole they plug into, and plug them in, they just like to kind of pop back out here. They don't really stay in there, where Starscream doesn't have that issue. Again, it could just be my copy. So that's a bad thing for her. The good thing is that her shoulders rotate up and down on a ratchet, fairly easily. Just the right amount of tension. My Starscream, however, his are extremely tight. Like, to the point that I'm afraid they're going to break eventually. In fact, if you can see it, when I turn him, you see the plastic start to kind of open at the seams just to release some of the tension so you could actually get his shoulders turning. Something I'm really worried about in the long run, as far as, how long this figure is going to be around before some part of him just shatters. And it's something I really didn't bring up when I reviewed Starscream himself, which I should have, because that, to me, is a big flaw. I mean, he's already a very flawed toy, but that, when he's designed in such a way that he may just break from normal play, no matter how careful you are, is kind of a big negative. So, if you go back to my Starscream review, take everything I said about it, and then just dock some points, because having a self-destructive toy is just a big no-no for me. So we've gotten a good look at the robot mode. Now for the final configuration, we're going to transform her to her combiner mode. And just barely in the shot, we have Elita's combine mode, which, just like Starscream's, wasn't released with an official name for the combiner, which is called Super Robot, very generically. However, Toy Fair just happened, and it was revealed by the Hasbro team that her combiner's name is actually Elita Infinite, with the third I in Infinite being replaced with a 1. Not my favorite choice for the combiner name, especially with the weird 1 in Infinite. Like, I get they're trying to keep the 1 because Elita 1, but it just kind of comes off as corny to me. But anyway, if you've seen the Starscream combiner, it's not any real big surprise here. She forms exactly the same way. Very triangular, kibbly, almost movie Starscream appearance. She holds her Enigma here in the center of her torso. However, if you don't like the way that looks, you could always, take that out and then just set it aside or plug it into one of the, hands or feet that she has. A lot of people were confused when they first saw pictures of her combiner mode, because at first glance, her combiner head looks a lot like her regular robot mode head. But upon further inspection, you can see it's actually quite different. From, the number of spikes to just the overall shape. So while made to look similar to her normal robot mode head, in, what is probably some sort of just power up for Elita herself. So rather than this being a distinct personality, more likely this is just Elita attaching a bunch of other robots to her and powering up. It is a really neat looking sculpt. Again, lacks expression like her regular robot mode head does. And by further extension, Starscream's version. I don't know why they decided every version of this mold just has to look like they're perpetually bored, but it's not a bad sculpt. Her torso mode is actually a bit more functional than Starscream's was, mainly because her hip joints, or what are her robot shoulder joints, they seem to line up a little better. With the Starscream version, the legs were set in a way to where they wanted to squeeze inward, as if, there was kind of a misalignment of the ratchet. So you'd either have to have him, looking like he had to pee real bad, or have his legs spread apart. Hers do set straight a little more naturally, which is nice. I don't know if it, again, is just a difference between the copies I got, or if they actually did make some improvements to that. And, something in the same vein as Combiner Wars Optimus and Motormaster. But it is a welcome fix either way. It makes her a lot more stable. Overall, Elita 1 does all 3 of her modes pretty well. And with that, we're going to move on to Hun-Gurrr. Here's a look at Hun-Gurr's box. Got his name Hun-Gurrr with 3 R's. Because you got 3 R's, it makes it cooler. It's got his beast mode depicted on here. He's shooting some kind of laser out of his mouth. Looks very cool. There you have a picture of Abominus, one of the original, 1980s combiners. Usual gimmicks and explanations on the back. There's a little character bio, which is standard. Yeah, that's it. Here's Hun-Gurr's card showing off that beast mode again. Get a better look at it. You can see he's actually shooting 2 lasers from his mouths. And got the prime symbols floating around in the background here. Fire, very cool looking picture. This is another Alpha Trion base card. And he's Alpha Trion Hun-Gurrr, a brilliant leader whose armies leave nothing in their wake. Which, judging by that scene, I can believe that. And now we have the Terracon leader himself, Hun-Gurrr. His alternate mode is a 2-headed dragon. He's a somewhat disproportional one in that he has these really long necks, very thick necks too, and these kind of stubby little forelegs here, but he doesn't look bad. He kind of grows on you as you look at him. He does have his little Prime Master Gauntlet things attached to his rear legs, which you can remove if you so choose. You don't want them obstructing, you know. Let's look. I do like that due to the way they're made. It kind of looks like they're little gun emplacements that he's firing at you with. Don't know if that was intentional, but, you know, you can use your imagination, come up with something. The necks do have, you know, some nice articulation here. The heads can turn, lift up and down, jaws open. The little stickers right there on the foreheads, which you gotta be careful because they like to peel up. Stickers on the sides of the necks there. And he's got a lot of just neat little details, little spikes here. He's got his tail. One thing that people noticed when they first saw this toy is that he seemed familiar to them, and it didn't take long for people to piece together that he seemed a lot like Combiner Wars Silverbolt. And that led to, you know, some assuming that he was some sort of retool of Silverbolt. They felt that even his dragon mode just looks like you just laid Silverbolt on his back and stuck his legs up in the air, pretended they were dragon heads. The truth of the matter, however, is that he, while sharing the same overall engineering as Silverbolt, is an entirely new mold. They don't share any parts, which is nice. So while a lot of the steps of the transformation will feel familiar, the overall transformation is actually a good bit more involved than Silverbolt's was. There's a few more moving parts to deal with. He does get some criticism because of his really small little front legs and the fact that they're really just not articulated at all. They're just solid pieces. And I can see that. You know, it makes him look almost cute in a way rather than, you know, this fearsome leader of a group of monstrous Decepticons. But it's not something I feel really detracts from the toy a whole lot. Despite the fact that they are one solid piece, they are a well-molded piece with lots of detail. They got paint on them, so I can't complain. Hun-Gurr's Enigma can be placed inside of his little Prime Master gauntlets, or it could actually even be stored in this little chest panel here. If I can open it. There we go. And, you know, fits in there nice and snugly. You can close the panel up to hide it if you want to. So you have some more options for storage. And now that we've gotten a good look at his beast mode, let us take a look at the robot mode. And there he is. The first thing that stands out to me with Hun-Gurrr is just his purple head with the silver shades going on there. It does kind of evoke, you know, a simpler time of toys, and, you know, if they wanted to, they could add more variation to the color, but I like the way it looks. I don't know if it's a nostalgia thing, but just the all purple head kind of works for me. His tail forms, you know, kind of the front of his chest there, little spikes sticking out. Get to attach his gauntlets to his forearms where they continue to look like some sort of guns, so they do look a bit more useful than most of the Prime Master gauntlets that these Voyagers have. Somewhat backpacky. Doesn't stick too far off his back, so it doesn't really bother me. And just like the original Hun-Gurrr toy, his dragon heads become his feet, with the next being the legs. And he is fully posable. You know, he's got ratchets in his hips, all different swivels and all that fun stuff. Lots of ankle tilt. He is a little bit floppy when it comes to the ankles. Not too bad. I mean, there's some friction there. And a lot of it may just have to do with the somewhat small size of his feet. But he comes off looking very nice. He definitely looks like a very 80s toy, just done up in, you know, 21st century. You'll notice he has a Decepticon symbol on each shoulder. And this one looks different because it was actually made to resemble the old rub signs that the Generation 1 toys had, where, you know, this would be all black, and then you would press your finger on it or some sort of heat source, and the sticker would actually react and show you what faction the particular Transformer was in. It wasn't a feature I was crazy about. I always felt like rub signs detracted from the look of the toy, but some people thought they were cool. So thought that was a neat touch where you give something that evokes the old rub sign without actually putting a rub sign there. It's a good compromise, in my opinion. All right, he doesn't do a whole lot in the robot mode, so you can just pose him, make him look cool. But I think where this guy really shines is what's coming up next, and that's his combiner mode. So let's get to that. And this is Hun-Gurr's torso mode. For anybody familiar with the character, you already know that he is the central component to the classic combiner Abominus, which is comprised of all 5 of the Terracons. Now, unfortunately, due to the way that they're releasing these toys and the order they're choosing to do that, none of the Terracons are really widely available yet. Some people are getting Ripper Snapper here in the States. I haven't been so lucky quite yet. But the other remaining 3 won't be available till Wave 3. So it's going to be a while before you can build Abominus proper. This is the best we're going to get for now. But as far as his torso mode, I love it. I absolutely love the colors on there, like this magenta and everything. His head has the magenta face with a white helmet. Got soft plastic horns up here. Mine are slightly bent. I don't think they're supposed to be bent at all. Should be just completely straight. The head design that they chose to go with is the toy accurate version. The cartoon accurate version, the colors are kind of swapped. Where he has a purple helmet and a antennae point like outwards. I know some people were disappointed that they chose to go with the toy accurate head sculpt. I personally actually prefer the toy version. I think it makes him a little more unique where he has a plain white helmet and a colored face. Usually the helmet's the darker color. But yeah, the torso holds together very well. This is currently actually my favorite torso out of the Power of the Primes line so far. It's the sturdiest. It kind of sticks with the tried and true, more compact, more stable design. When you look at, the 2 jets, Grimlock, they're very flimsy looking. One thing about this new take on the Abominus torso that some people aren't really crazy about is that the original version of Abominus actually had the dragon heads as his knees. And they would just stick kind of straight forward. As you can probably tell from the setup, though, that design choice wouldn't work with a lot of the leg mode deluxes that we have now, because a lot of them have moved their kibble to the front, vice the back of the toy. So while I was initially disappointed that this wasn't going to have the little dragon knee pads, because I always felt that kind of helped set the combiner apart from others, I get why they had to sacrifice that, and in the end it wasn't such an integral element to the character's design that it really had to stick around. The only problem I have with the torso is that these little dragon legs here that are on the sides of his chest are supposed to peg in here. And the first time I ever transformed him into his torso mode, I had no issue with this. Now, however, when I try to press these in all the way, they just pop back out. And no matter what I do to try to mess with them and push them in, different angles, different force, I can't get it to stand now. Luckily, it's really even hard to tell that they're not firmly pegged in there just, by looking at this guy dead on, so it doesn't do anything to detract from how he looks. So I'm not going to let it bother me. I pointed out at the beginning of this that he can store his Enigma in this little chest bit here. It still holds true. Pull this down. Put the panel down and have his Enigma on display. And because the plastic of the Enigma matches the plastic of his chest here, it blends in very well, and all you can really see is a circular bit. So makes it kind of stand out, makes it look like there's just a circle there and not all this square block. So you can choose to have it open like that. It does look pretty cool, admittedly. Though if you're a bit of a purist and you want that panel closed up, you don't want to see that, you can actually do that. And he is currently the only torso bot in this toy line that you can have the Enigma attached to his chest and actually have it hidden. Grimlock and the 2 jet torsos, you have to have it just out there on full display. There's no way to conceal it. So I think that's a really nice touch. But yeah, seeing this guy in his torso mode is just really got me hankering for the full-on Abominus combiner that should be coming to us here in the coming months. So as far as my final impressions on these two, I really, really like both of these figures. I would definitely say I prefer them to the Wave 1 Voyagers overall. You know, Elita is just kind of a better version of the Starscream mold, and Hun-Gurrr is just a better toy than Grimlock, in my opinion. His proportions just look good. His torso mode is 1,000 times better. And so far, I've reviewed the Legends, Voyager, and Leader class figures in the second wave of this toy line, and so far, I mean, it's just better than Wave 1. I mean, Wave 1 wasn't terrible. Brought us some good things, but I feel like the toy line's really hitting its stride now, which is a shame because it's apparently set to be really short, and the whole line's going to be over by the end of this year. So that really is disappointing because they could have done so much more with this. There's a lot of other combiners they could have touched on, and a lot of other really cool and really needed, maybe larger figures, even smaller figures. We could always go for more mini cars, mini bots. But yeah, I mean, I really highly recommend both of these toys. Elita's strongest point is definitely her robot mode. It just looks really good. I point out I love the coral color on her. I think it's very different for a Transformers toy. It just works for her. And it's just kind of about time that we got, an official Elita 1 toy that wasn't a club exclusive. Hun-Gurrr is relatively simple to look at. He doesn't have a lot of fancy bits hanging off of him, but what he does in Modesty, he does really well. And he really just brings me back to the feel of a 1980s action figure. So, yeah, I really strongly recommend both of these. They're starting to show up in Walmarts right now, so, happy hunting. Hope you guys can snag them. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the review. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Feel free to leave any comments below. Let me know what you think of these toys, whether or not you plan on getting them, whether you prefer them to the other figures. And with all that said, I will see you next time.